This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. As the days get shorter and colder, it can really take a toll on how we feel. Maybe that means calling your grandma, writing a letter to your friend, finally grabbing lunch with someone you haven't seen in a while. And just like reaching out to a friend, starting therapy can take a bit of courage. BetterHelp makes it easy to start therapy. You'll be matched with a licensed therapist based on your needs and preferences so you can focus on your growth and goals. Not happy with your match? You can switch therapists anytime with no hassle. This month, don't wait to reach out, whether that's checking in on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself. BetterHelp makes it easier to take that first step. And our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/PFF. That's betterhelp.com/PFF. Number 4, Alabama beating LSU 20-9. LSU, how about this stat, Dalton? We'll get to this in later on. 25 or fewer points in every game this year against an FBS opponent. The only other schools who have scored 25 or fewer points in every game against an FBS opponent are UMass, Nevada, and Northern Illinois. Those three and LSU are the only offenses in the country that have scored 25 or fewer in every game against an FBS team.
Yeah,
that's tough.
That says it all. More than anything for just this one game, that says it all. And about where this LSU team is at offensively, because they've really kind of unbeknownst to us because we were so focused on how great their defense was in their early wins. But no, their offense, this is how they've looked all year. It's every single week with them.
Let's get to the grades right now for Alabama. First off, their highest graded player was linebacker Nikhai Hill-Green, 92.3 grade for the transfer linebacker for Alabama, the journeyman linebacker. I'll talk about him later on in the show. Safety, Bray Hubbard with a really good 86.6 PFF grade. Edge rusher, Yanze Pierre, who's really emerged for Alabama in that pass rush, 83.2. Linebacker Deontay Lawson, 82.1. Quarterback Dejon Lee Jr., 74.8. And Ty Simpson, who's also in the Heisman race right now with a really good 79.2 grade against LSU. Let's go over to LSU now with their highest graded players in the lost. West Weeks, not Whit Weeks, who's still hurt with an injury, but his brother West Weeks with a really good 80.5 PFF grade. Another linebacker here, and Harold Perkins Jr. with an 80 grade. Jamari Butler, the edge rusher, 71.2. Mansour Delane, the star corner for LSU, 66 grade. Jack Pyburn, 65.6 at edge rusher. And Garrett Nussmeier, who got benched in this game for Michael Van Buren Jr., Nussmeier only a 53 grade in the loss. Dalton, what told the story in this game?
Look, the story, obviously all eyes are always on Ty Simpson. He had another solid game. A couple misses in the second half, the strip sack. LSU hung around, it felt like, for longer than you feel like they should have, considering the way their offense was playing. But the story is this Alabama defense. When you look at the way they've been playing, and in past weeks there's been times where they've taken some punches and then come back with timely turnovers. They were really just outstanding. You don't give up a touchdown in this game to an LSU offense that obviously is struggling, but still is a threat with the guys they have on the outside and Garrett Nussmeier and apparently Michael Van Buren at quarterback. But Alabama, 88.8 team defensive grade. Their highest against a Power 4 opponent in more than 3 years. Okay, so you think about all those years we had Nick Saban and this Alabama defense, and you just could never score on them. Max is starting to really find a rhythm here. A 90.6 run defense grade, 83 rushing yards allowed, 37 of them on the one explosive run from Harlem Berry, 90.6 coverage grade as well, one explosive pass allowed in the first half of this game. And Garrett Nussmeier, I believe his average depth of target was less than 3 yards.
Yep.
Wasn't 2.9 yards? Yes, it was Nussmeier, and look, the LSU, their inability to run the football on their offensive line is well documented. We've done that a million times already. But also this Alabama defense, this now looks like, especially with Yanze Pierre emerging as another pass rusher alongside LT Overton, this looks like the top 5 defense we were expecting to see coming into the season with talent at all 3 levels. Hill-Green was great. Deontay Lawson's on an absolute burner right now, several weeks in a row. You've got Bray Hubbard, Keon Sabb at safety. They forced 3 fumbles in this game. Pierre with the 2 sacks. Just above all else, I think, especially it shows in the score, a defensive clinic put on by Alabama. And I think if they continue to play defense like this and just complement it with the offense, it's not always pretty on offense. There's moments every game where it looks outstanding, and then there's other times where you go, they could run the football a little better. Simpson missed a few throws in the second half, but this defense is a real problem, especially when you look at the way they can cover on the back end in the secondary.
Yeah, my stat is Garrett Nussmeier from a clean pocket in this one. As I mentioned in the preview, how LSU's offensive line against Alabama's pass rush was a matchup of weakness on weakness. And it's important to know that because Garrett Nussmeier is really good from a clean pocket overall this season. He entered the week with a 85.6 passing grade, one kept clean. LSU's offensive line delivered him a lot of clean pockets in this one. A 90.4 pass blocking grade for LSU. That's their best in a game since 2022, and it's their best pass blocking grade in a game against a Power 4 opponent ever in PFF college history. So LSU's offensive line delivered against Alabama, only allowed 3 pressures total in this one. Now, of course, a lot of it was Garrett Nussmeier threw 12 screens in this game with a 2.9 yard average at the target. So there were a lot of times where he got rid of the football quickly in this game. But still, LSU's offensive line performed more than admirably against Alabama. But LSU still only scored 9 points because Garrett Nussmeier could not win from those clean pockets. A 62 passing grade from clean pocket. Second worst for him all year, second worst for him ever, only ahead of the Alabama loss last year for Garrett Nussmeier. 0 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. He had a really, really bad sack where he just completely spun into Yonze Pierre later on in the game. He got benched for Michael Van Buren Jr., and you can see why, because Van Buren at least provided a little bit of a jolt to that LSU offense in this one. Alabama's secondary was unbelievable, even without much of a pass rush to speak of, with a 90.6 coverage grade overall for Alabama. They completely locked up LSU's receivers, but Garrett Nussmeier just struggled to win from a clean pocket, even though he had nothing but clean pockets to work from.
I think you mentioned it with we've talked about them losing four NFL players on that offensive line. To me, I know Trey'Dez Green's been really good lately as a big 6'7" tight end who can go up and get the jump balls and all of that. But this team, it feels like this year, is just you've never known what the objectives are in this offense, right? They don't run the football consistently well. Alabama just shut them down in the run game outside of one big run from Harlem Berry. And in the passing game, it now just feels like even though they did play well in pass protection, it feels like there's so little trust in this offensive line. When you talk about 11 of Nussmeier's 18 completions were behind the line of scrimmage.
It's crazy.
There's just no trust there at all. With Nussmeier, with the receivers, there's not many guys winning one-on-one against a really good secondary. So, I mean, this LSU offense, it sunk them. And the vibes really could not be lower right now in Baton Rouge. And look, Alabama gets another big win.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, now you're talking about another huge game coming next week. It's not like it gets any easier. They get Oklahoma next week. And then, of course, the Iron Bowl at the end of the year. But Alabama, I think, another big win on under their belt, and even one where they didn't play their best football. I think Kalen DeBoer is going to be a little annoyed with how they played in the second half on offense. But this defense now, the way that they're playing and the balance that Alabama has to beat you in multiple ways, I think it is a lot like even we were talking about with Texas A&M earlier, and that's why they're 2 of the top 4 teams in the country.
Yeah. So who do you want to shout out in the Alabama defense in this one?
Let's give credit. I know we've talked about him before in a couple other games, but you remember when Bray Hubbard was the poster child of that Florida State loss at the beginning of the year? Well, he's really turned it around, and this was one of his best games of the year. How about a 91.2 run defense grade with a forced fumble early? Alabama didn't get to recover that one, but it really made a statement, I thought, early in the game. Had a pass break up in the end zone that he could have intercepted. 4 total stops. This is somebody who brings a lot of attitude as the box safety, as the guy who's always sniffing around the line of scrimmage and can still make plays in coverage as well. The turnaround from Bray Hubbard and the perception and image of him coming out of that Florida State loss, he's been outstanding ever since then. He's been a big reason why this Alabama defense has been so good. There's a ton of names, but Bray Hubbard's been one of their best players lately.
I want to go with Nikhai Hill-Green here, who has been unreal. He's known as a great run defender for Alabama, but the journeyman linebacker was outstanding in coverage for the Crimson Tide, a 92.3 coverage grade. He punched the ball out on Bauer Sharp, the tight end, and recovered it in one of the biggest plays of the game for Alabama. 2 catches allowed on 4 targets for only 3 yards. Also had a run defense stop in this one, too. He's now at his 4th school right now, and he's making an impact in the middle of that Crimson Tide defense. So Nikhai Hill-Green, man, a journeyman linebacker. It's rare to get journeyman in college football, but Nikhai Hill-Green is exactly that. And he's been great for Alabama yesterday.
Well, it's not as rare as it used to be. I mean, now we get him all the time, right? You think about
TJ Finley had 7 schools in 5 years.
Dylan Gabriel with 3 logos on his helmet at the Senior Bowl, right?
True,
I mean, it's certainly not news anymore when you get these guys bouncing all over the place. But Hill-Green, I mean, we talked last year about the impact he had on Colorado's defense, and he's come over and made a similar impact in just an outstanding linebacking core. When you look at him, Deontay Lawson, and Justin Jefferson, those guys have been playing great all year. Lawson, especially the last few games, has been outstanding as well. We've talked about guys, legitimate players at all 3 levels of Alabama's defense. That's what you're looking for. That's why they can play with anybody.
Yep, Alabama, massive win over LSU, 20-9 in the huge rivalry game between those two programs.